welcome to another video. So this is going to be the start of quite a long vlog. I'm going to try and get it out at the end of July. I may not, it depends whether or not I read all of the books that I need to read for it. So as you might be able to tell from title, thumbnail, all of that, this is a reading all of the Goodreads romance winners vlog. Better come up with a better name than that. So my plan is, since 2011, Goodreads has done the Goodreads Choice Awards, and there has been a winner in the romance category each year. So which I'm planning on reading and discussing, which are all of the winners of the Goodreads Choice Awards over the last 12 years. Obviously this is up to 2022, 2023 awards haven't happened yet. I go through the books I'm going to be reading on this list. I'm not reading all 12 of them. There are 4 that I have already read. Technically there's 5, but I'm going to reread one of them. So I've got 8 books that I'm going to be reading for this vlog. Some of them are, well, quite a few of them actually are in series. I'm not going to be reading the whole series, just because who's got time for that? But I will get to that as we go. I'm also going to any of the other ones in the list. So let's start off by going through the books. So we're going to start with 2011, and the winner was Lover Unleashed by J.ayre Ward. This is book 9, I think, of the Black Dagger Brotherhood. I have not read any of the Black Dagger Brotherhood, and I'm not going to read books 1 to 8 because, quite honestly, can't be asked. I mean, they're not small books, so I'm not reading the first 8 books. I'm just going to jump straight in. Next, the winner for 2012 was 50 Shades Freed, the 3rd book in the 50 Shades trilogy by E.L. James. I have 2013. I don't have the copy physically. The winner was Lover at Last by J.ayre Ward. This is book 11 in the Black Dagger Brotherhood. 2014, we have another one in a series which I don't own physically, Written in My Own Heart's Blood by Diana Galbadron. I don't think that is the author, I'm sorry, but it's Written in My Own Heart's Blood, which is the book 8 in the Outlander series. I've read Outlander 1. I am not reading all of the rest of the Outlanders to get to book 8. I believe it's a 9-book series. I'm not reading books 2 to 7. I'm going to look up spoilers and just catch myself up and just read that. Okay, we're now in 2015, and now we're getting into some books that I was going to say that I've heard, or I've obviously heard of E.L. James. I've read it before. But we're getting more into that kind of contemporary romance, which is now what we think of as romance books. So the winner in 2015 was Confess by Colleen Hoover. Our winner for 2016 is our next Colleen Hoover. It Ends With Us. Now, I am not surprised. We then move on to 2017, and our 3rd Colleen Hoover is Without Merit. This is another library book, hence the very shiny plastic on it. I don't actually know what Without Merit is popular with everyone. The winner for 2018 was The Kiss Quotient by Helen Huang. I have read this book, I don't own it physically. So we've got here again, the winner for 2019 was Red, White and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston. So I own this one, I haven't yet read it. 2020, our winner was From Blood and Ash by Jennifer L. Armentrout. So again, this one's 2021 was You and Me on Vacation, or People We Met on Vacation by Emily Henry. This one I haven't yet read, but I am very excited to. I don't actually have very much to say on this one, because then our 2022 winner was Book Lovers by Emily Henry. So again, clearly I'm using the core pile to rate my books, just because A, this is the rating system I use anyway, but B, I feel like it's going to be a little bit more fair for me to be able to really see why I'm giving books these ratings, rather than just being like, it's a 5-star. This 5 stars better than that 5-star, but I can't really tell you why. So I'm going to use my core pile ratings and kind of explain through them. I will link up there, I think it is, I might be wrong, the core pile video from j.ayre. Let's get into the books and my thoughts. Hello. So I last night started reading Love Unleashed. Okay, I say I started reading it. I read 10 pages. I read the prologue. Anyway, so I started reading with this one, and I feel like I'm gonna have to be quite generous with my reviews, bearing in mind that this is book 9 in a series, because the prologue I didn't really like. The prologue was set in like 1730 or something, and it was written in a very oldie worldy like way. So I'll see if I can find an example in here. Like, they kept using the word verily, and I'm just like, right, like, nobody says that. I don't think people said that in 17, page 8. Whilst Score prepared himself to plough his stallion right into them, the female let out a yell that was not feminine at all. More along the lines of his own war cry, the bellow cut through the thunder and hooves beneath him, and the sounds of his band of bastards gathering themselves to counter this unexpected attack. Just, like, I don't know why we need to say that she is not feminine. Like, that just feels a little bit icky to me. I just kind of, it's not only the language that irritates me, but the blatant sexism that I'm just not a fan of. And it's one of those where I get it that this is meant to be a vampire in the 1700s. It is a very patriarchal society, but I don't feel like this is like the sexism is coming from the character. It feels like it's coming from the author, and that sounds, I don't know if that makes sense, but I feel like sometimes you can add in sexism or whatever, things which are problematic to the character to make the character seem to be that way. But the way that it's been put in this prologue, it kind of feels like an addition from the author rather than an addition that the character feels. And maybe I'm just being like overly sensitive. And again, I've read 10 pages. I really can't comment yet. Oh, the first line of the actual book is, "I want to blow you." We might have some promise. But yeah, I don't know what I'm going to think of this. But regardless, I feel like every book in the series should be its own like story arc. So if you can't, if there's a book that doesn't have its own individual story arc within its pages, then it's not a finished book. And like by that, I kind of mean that, yes, there'll be an overarching series arc, but each book should have its own story. So I feel like, yes, you want to have read the ones before to understand what happened to get to this point in the overarching series. But when you're at that point, I'm expecting, this is like a 500-page book. I expect the first 100 pages to be a little bit confusing because I don't know what's happened before, but the rest should make sense in its own self-contained story, is my theory. So I'm not liking it at the moment, but I'm going to give it at least, I think I want to get to at least the 200-page mark before I consider whether, I really don't want to DNF, but I'm going to give it at least, like I said, 200 pages before I consider DNFing at all. Just because if I've got that far in, I feel like that's a fair shot in terms of allowing for the fact that it's book 9 in a series and I haven't read the rest. And then, yeah, I will see what I think. quick update. So I'm still on Lover Unleashed. I am on page 62. I'm really not enjoying the writing. So it feels like, you know, the kind of 1960s American cop dramas where everyone is going in all guns blazing and sort of, you know, just like really macho and yeah, ooh. It feels like that, which quite honestly I am not enjoying. It's just this sort of, the writing style just makes me think that it's trying to, I don't really understand who it's trying to attract, because it feels, the writing style, like I said, feels like the kind of 1960s cop drama where it's almost trying to attract a male audience, being like, yeah, this is so cool. But it's a vampire romance, and romance is always traditionally a female audience and written for the female gaze. And it just feels very, very jarring at the moment. And like I said, I'm not enjoying it. I am still determined to get to at least page 200 before a DNF, but it's looking like it's going to be a DNF at this point, except only on page 60. It might turn around. I do, however, feel like the 8 stories that have come before, I don't feel like I'm missing any information at the moment. You know, there are some things like, I don't know why Jane faked her death, because I know that was a story in a previous book. I don't know why she did that other than she's married a vampire. And I don't really understand how she's a ghost but not dead. But I'm kind of, that's not ruining, I'd say, my enjoyment of the story, but I'm not really enjoying the story. But it's not ruining my understanding of this story, let's say. So yeah, I'm going to carry on reading, and we will see. So just going to read another little excerpt of why I'm finding the writing really difficult. Happy little words like undisclosed location and national security hopscotched through his cranial park, and that helped a lot, making him think that maybe he could forgive Jane for ghosting out on him eventually. When she stopped outside a pair of double flappers, her hands fidgeted with the lapels of her white coat and then the stethoscope in her pocket, and that didn't make him feel like he had a gun to his head. In the OR, in countless trauma messes, she'd always kept her cool. It was her trademark. Or then, another piece here. The response he got in return was just fantastic. The bastard bared a pair of canines as long as his arm and growled natch like a dog. There's also been a mating bond, but not in a good way. This woman is his patient, paralysed, on the operating table. He walks in, stares at her and goes, "This female is mine." Honestly, the writing's really given me the ick. Every single one of these characters is giving me the ick. There is not a single likeable character so far, in my opinion. And this is it. I feel like Manny, who is the doctor that we're following, is written to be a likeable character. But yeah, he's just, it's just really not, it's not the one. Anyway. Okay, we are at page 224, pretty much halfway through, and I'm DNFing. I can't. So like I was saying earlier, the writing is really, this is written like romance that's written for a man. The romance scenes are so, I don't know how to describe it other than they're really unromantic. And don't get me wrong, I am absolutely fine with like dirty, heavy, dark sex books. Like smut, great. Give me the dark smut, it's fantastic. But this is more than just dark smut. It's really like I said, it makes me very uncomfortable. I took some screenshots of some bits that I thought. So we've got a part here where we've met a large-breasted barmaid. As he held out his black Amex, she breasticulated wildly, bending over so far she might as well have been trying to pick up a swizzle stick off the floor with her nipples. As she hipped her way off. Where are we here? Little more liquor, then add some females into the mix. Step 3 was to go back into one of the bathroom and fuck the girls. Then more eye contact, preferably when one or both of them were inside a woman, because as much of this redhead with the great hair appeared to be into chicks, the SOB had felt the connection when the two of them had looked at each other, and hetero was a relative term. Kind of like virgin. I can't, I've got more. They were colloined and coiffed, but they were not she-males in the slightest. Frankly, that would have made things a lot easier. For fuck's sake, he wished one of the SOBs would RuPaul their shit and go all feather boa and fingernail polish. But no, they just kept looking at like two hot males who knew how to spend their money at Saks. I mean, the homophobia here is just disgusting. So yeah, we've got, in my opinion, homophobia, transphobia, so much toxic masculinity, and I'm not reading this. No. DNF, I'm sorry, this is awful. Hello. So I have decided to read the full trilogy of 50 Shades, just because I know they're super quick reads, and I just decided to. However, so I'm 85 pages into 50 Shades of Grey. I'll be honest, I'm enjoying it, but the writing is very questionable. So there was a sentence earlier, it's a library book, so I haven't been able to like tab or anything. But there was a sentence earlier where the word besmirched was used twice in the same sentence. And I'm just like, maybe find a thesaurus, hey E.L. James. My legs and underarms are shaved to perfection, my eyebrows plucked, and I am buffed all over. It has been the most unpleasant experience, but she assures me that this is what men expect these days. And I feel like, and maybe this is me just looking at it with 2023 goggles rather than 2011 goggles, but pushing a romance as things that men expect isn't the best. I feel like if a man is upset by a little bit of body hair, well, find yourself a new man, no matter how sexy or read by E.L. James. I didn't like it. I haven't yet rated it, but it's probably a 2.5, maybe a 3-star, but probably not. So I'm just going to talk about this book, not the whole trilogy. But for this book specifically, it's far too long. It's about 150 pages too long. The sex scenes are so repetitive. They're repetitive throughout the whole series. So by the time you've got to book 3 and you're reading the exact same sex scenes and there is minimum of one every chapter, it's boring. I skipped all of the sex scenes because I was bored of them. And I feel like when you're reading a romance, you shouldn't really be bored of the romantic part. I felt like the actual plot of this one just didn't really make much sense. Plots to drive the story forward. And I feel like if you're going to have a conflict in a book, if you're going to do a third act breakup, if you're going to use a specific trope, it needs to drive the plot forward, and I don't think it did in this one. You know, we knew that Christian would use his stalking tendencies to find out where Anna was and save the day. In terms of the book itself, I thought the writing was poor. I thought there was a lot of repetition. for example, multiple times, Anna's panties disintegrated, her constant referral of her inner conscious, I don't know, but there's another personality lives in her head. That's the one who seems to only read Charles Dickens, which is weird. And her constant use of the phrase "oh my," just really frustrating. Yeah, I said so. I didn't think the writing was very good. I don't think the characters have developed at all. And I know people will say, so Anna was an incredibly jealous character. So throughout, her jealousy of Elena and, or Mrs. Robinson, or bitch troll, I think she's referred to in the third one. And I understand why she would be jealous, but it's one of those where this just maybe is a personal irritant. She tells Christian, seeing her is a hard limit. She uses the phrase hard limit to mean absolutely no chance, no discussion, you can't. However, when he multiple times used the phrase saying touching me is a hard limit, she goes, but I want to touch you. I'm just going to touch you a little bit. Why can't I touch you? And it's like, no, you can't use that phrase, the hard limit. You can't use those limits to get what you want and not understand from someone else's point of view. And I feel like that's where I don't think this book has done the BDSM community any services whatsoever, because I just don't think it's well represented or a positive relationship. Can I see why this one won the Goodreads Choice Awards? Yes, I can. These were an absolute phenomenon when they came out. Yes, I can absolutely understand why this won the prize. Do I think it was a worthy winner? No, not really. I think if this was released today, it wouldn't get a look in. I do think one thing I have got to say is I think that 50 Shades and E.L. James particularly paved the way for modern romance. We wouldn't get the modern smutty romance, we wouldn't have we wouldn't have those authors writing the books they do today if it wasn't for E.L. James and 50 Shades of Grey. You wouldn't have TikTok tables full of smutty romance books if it wasn't for 50 Shades. I do firmly believe that. But reading it now with 2023 glasses on instead of 2012 glasses on, it's not great. It's not well written. It is not a good story. The smut is not good. The characters are not good. It's just not for me, just not the one. But 2012 done. Hello. So I have a bit of a confession to make. As you've seen already, I DNF'd Lover Unleashed by j.ayre. And my original plan was, instead of reading Lover at Last, which was the winner of the 2013 Goodreads Choice Awards, I'd read the one that came second, which was I'll pop it up here, Walking Disaster by Jamie McGuire. I've decided I'm not going to do that. To be totally honest, today's the 2nd of August. I have no interest in that book, so I'm hello again. I have another confession. So for 2014, the winner was Written in My Own Heart's Blood by Diana Galbadron. This is book 8 of 9 of the Outlander series. I'm not going to read it, guys. I looked up spoilery synopses, and even then I'm really sorry if you can hear Bracken panting in the background. But even with spoilery synopses, I didn't know what was going on. I feel like I would need to read the others in the series to actually appreciate Written in My Own Heart's Blood. I'm not reading 7 books in the Outlander series, not when they're all sort of 700-800 pages long. No. So I'm not going to read that one. Hello, I'm actually editing at the moment, and I'm just fact checking myself as I'm editing. I have spoken this whole part about how assuming that Ugly Love was written after Confess. It actually wasn't. Ugly Love was published in 2014 and Confess was published in 2016. So basically all of this part is wrong. Yeah. Hello, I realise I completely forgot to vlog at all while I was reading Confess. I did read it within 2 sittings because I was listening to it on audiobook and I basically had it on while I was doing other things, and it's not a very long book. Auburn and Owen. Auburn was in love with this guy called Adam when she was a teenager, and then Adam died. She's now living in Texas where Adam grew up, and struggling, working a couple of jobs. She sees a sign for help, $100 an hour, so she's like, yes, please. There she meets Owen. Owen's gallery is only open once a month. He takes anonymous confessions from people and he turns those confessions into pictures. But I enjoyed it. I haven't yet rated it, and I'm going to rate it and come back on and talk about it a little bit more once I've rated it. But in terms of I've read a few Colleen Hoovers. I think this would be like maybe my 6th or 7th. And because of that, I felt like I kind of knew what was going to happen. And again, you know, there were sort of twists, surprises that I maybe didn't guess exactly, but didn't shock me. And I don't want to say that as in that's like a negative on the book, because I think they were twists and surprises that made sense in the book and actually would be surprising to someone, especially bearing in mind this is one of Colleen Hoover's earlier books. I think they were really, really good. But just me, who has read quite a few of her books, was prepared that there would be a dramatic thing and then there would be at the very, very end another dramatic reveal on how the people knew each other, or something that was mentioned at the beginning. So like in this one, it's mentioned as soon as they meet that Owen, you know, from Owen's perspective, he goes, it was her, it was that girl. She doesn't know who I am, but I remember her. And then it's not mentioned until literally like the last page of how he knew her in the past. So I was expecting that, and while I hadn't guessed the specifics, I knew that would be coming. And likewise with the sort of, I'm calling it a twist because I think it is designed to be a twist. Again, for me, having read quite a few Colleen Hoovers, I know her beat points in her books. I know what to expect in her writing. I knew it would be coming, and it didn't shock me when, you know, the twist happened, and, you know, when a really good twist, particularly for an earlier book. Now, for me, again, my own personal reading, as someone who's read other Colleen Hoovers, it felt similar to Ugly Love. And again, thinking of the timeline of when the books were written, it feels like with Ugly Love, she took the ideas that she started in Confess and built on them to create Ugly Love. There's a few plot lines that are similar. I don't want to say they're the same because they're not the same, but there are very similar plot lines that potentially kind of, you know, lead to different outcomes, but they are still, I feel like the two big dramatic events that happen in Confess also happen in Ugly Love. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. Excuse me, I'm going to cough. Author, you know, she learned these things in Confess and then put them into Ugly Love, which obviously was a lot more successful and a lot more popular. I think now a lot more people have read Ugly Love than they have read Confess. But yeah, I felt like I knew what was going to happen. So I enjoyed the book. I am going to rate it and go through all of that in a minute with you. I just haven't done that yet. Is it my favourite Colleen Hoover? No. I have got another Colleen Hoover to read now as well. I realise I never actually rated Confess, so I should do that. So again, I'm going to go through my Cool Pal ratings. I've got my laptop down here in front of me. Characters for Confess. I did like them. I liked Owen, I liked Auburn. They are fairly forgettable characters. I'm going to give them a 7. I liked them, but I'm not going to remember them. The atmosphere. I'm going to give Atmosphere a 6.5. I liked it. It just was a little bit, again, it was a little bit forgettable. Writing, I did enjoy. I'm going to say an 8. Like I was saying before, I felt like I've read it before, but that's because it reminds me a lot of Ugly Love, which I know was published later. So I liked the writing, but I feel like it is one of Colleen Hoover's earlier works, and I feel like she's improved as a writer. Plot. I'm going to give it a 7. Like, it was fine. Like I said, it was just fairly forgettable, to be totally honest. Intrigue. Okay, so again, similarly to what I said already, I knew there would be some form of twist. I just didn't know what that kind of twist would be. I'm going to give an 8 for Intrigue because I liked it. It was fine. Logic. That just seemed a bit weird. I'm going to give it a 7. Again, fine. And then finally, Enjoyment. I did like it. I'm going to give Enjoyment a 7.5. Like I said, I did enjoy it at the time. It was a fun reading experience. I'm just not going to remember it for very long. So Confess came out as a 4-star at a 7. So the next book I'm going to talk about is It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover. This is the winner in 2016. So I really loved this book. I cried a lot. I have still got my tabs in. These are all the red flags that I kind of spotted. There were more at the beginning, but I didn't stop tabbing at that point. I thought it was a really interesting book. I thought it was a really good book to open up discussions. And obviously it was a complete heart-wrencher. I gave it 9.64 out of 10. I don't have my breakdown here. For some reason I've lost my Cool Pal sheet, so I don't actually know what my exact breakdown was. And I haven't written that down here in my diary, but 9.64 was an incredibly high 5-star. I think if I reread it, I think it would still be a 5-star. I don't know if it'd be quite that high, but I think what's romance, because it's not a typical romance. I expect people know what It Ends With Us is about. It is about a couple going through domestic violence. So it doesn't end with a now we're together and we're happily ever after. It ends, I suppose, with a happily ever after, but that happily ever after isn't to do with a couple being together. So it's, you know, a non-conventional romance. I really struggle with categorising It Ends With Us as a romance, because I feel the danger with that is we fall into the risk of glamorising and romanticising domestic violence, which it shouldn't be. And I think It Ends With Us does a really good job of saying, you know, of showing how dangerous domestic violence is and how easy it is to get caught up and go, oh, it was a mistake, I'll forgive him, it will only be one time. And I think it does that really, really well. But I do, again, I don't like that it's categorised as a romance, I'll be totally honest. I am going to talk... Hello. I have just finished reading Without Merit by Colleen Hoover, and let's try and do some thoughts. So this wasn't my favourite. I've given this one 3.5 stars. I would, on Core it came out as like a 5.79, so I'd round it down to a 3. It was fine. And to be honest, that's really all I can say about it. It was fine. This read like a YA contemporary. And yeah, our main characters are 17, which I feel is why it's reading like a YA. And I didn't feel like they were very well developed or rounded. You never really got to know the whys and wherefores for any of the characters. They all felt quite two-dimensional. So this one, we follow the Voss family, where it's told from Merit's perspective. Merit has got a twin sister called Honor, an older brother called Utah, and a younger half-brother called Moby. She lives with her dad and his new wife, Victoria, and her mum, who is ill, who lives in the basement. Honor's friend Sagan moves in with them, and then also we, later on in the book, meet another guy who moves in with them called Luck, who turns out to be Victoria's half-brother. And this is where I feel like there were a lot of unanswered questions and a lot of things that just didn't really make sense. So we never really found out what happened between Luck and Victoria, why they hadn't talked for 5 years, why, like what, well, we knew what Luck had been doing, but we didn't understand like what drove him to go and do everything that he'd been doing for the last few years. And things like that, again, you know, we just didn't get that rounded character. Same with Sagan. We got an info dump on him and his background about 3/4 of the way through, but not in a kind of rounded way where you learn the character. It's just, here is my history, but there's still all those unanswered questions. And things like, so for Sagan, he has been living in the house for 2 weeks. Merit thinks he's living there because he's Honor's boyfriend. And he mentions that he was living with his grandmother, but his grandmother died 1.5 years ago. So, but we never find out what has he been doing between when his grandmother died, and he therefore was no longer living with her, to 2 weeks ago when he moved in with them. Like, that's just an empty gap. And I feel like this must be a deliberate thing on Colleen Hoover's part, because it does sort of, I guess, add into the fact that Merit is a very self-absorbed character. She doesn't care to find out more about anyone in her family. But I still feel like it just hasn't been well. It's come across as underdeveloped writing rather than a deliberate way of emphasising Merit's character. The plot as well, I don't feel really was great. So we got to, again, probably over the halfway point before the catalyst event happened. And then that was all over in about 1 chapter. And so it's that sort of thing where it's like, well, it's just not overly developed. It felt this book is less than it's just over 300 pages, I think. 350 pages. It took me 8 days to read. I should have been able to read this in about 2 or 3 days, to be totally honest. This is not a big book. The writing, the font is enormous in this. If I show you what I mean, you know, it's not like it's got a lot of words on each page. This is not a long book at all, but it took me so long to read it, because it just doesn't drive forward. This also, I would say, is probably the first Colleen Hoover that I've read where I haven't felt it. But I guess the thread running through Without Merit is mental health, depression, anxiety. And I do enjoy the fact that that exists, but I do not think it was handled well in this book. I don't think Colleen Hoover is maybe... Well, I don't want to say that she's not the right person to write about that, because she might be, but she just didn't do it well in this book. So Merit diagnosed herself with depression by completing a checklist and going, oh, I've got depression. Oh, okay, cool. And it's like, no, that's not how it works. And by making depression seem to be this very, very neat thing that you can answer in 5 questions on a checklist, that's not how any of this works. And same with her mum has got agoraphobia, but again, that's sort of not discussed or questioned. There's other mental health conditions mentioned in the book which aren't touched on properly. They're sort of just mentioned as, this is a thing that I have, look at me. And that's sort of what I feel. Is it feels like mental health was being held up as I'm going to talk about mental health, yay, rather than an actual driving force of the plot and of the book. Yeah, 3 stars, 3.5 maybe. Not my favourite. So the next book I'm going to talk about is our 2018 winner, which is The Kiss Quotient by Helen Huang. So I'm going to pop that one up here. So The Kiss Quotient, I gave a 7.2 out of 10 on Core So currently our leaderboard has got my kind of issues, I guess, with The Kiss Quotient is that I found the romance happened incredibly quickly. It was a bit too insta-lovey. And that might sound weird because it isn't an insta-love. But the couple meet. So our main character is autistic and she decides that she is going to pay a male escort to teach her how to date. But once they hook up, they're suddenly very much in a serious relationship. And I felt it was that, you know, like you had the build up, which was lovely, but then once they decided that they were a couple, they were really a couple. There wasn't any kind of like dating and kind of general, like, you know, the journey from friends through to lovers, that didn't happen. It was a very, very quick turnaround for me, in my opinion. I've heard the rep is really good. I'm not Own Voices, I can't comment on that. And I enjoyed the fact that, again, that we have not only an autistic main character, but we have non-white main characters as well. I like the fact that we are seeing people of different backgrounds, people of different ethnicities in our romances. Because like I was saying earlier, this is 2018, and this is the first time that we've seen a winner of Goodreads Choice Awards not be a straight white relationship. As far as I'm aware, I've not read all of the books here. So I liked The Kiss Quotient. I found the intrigue a little bit low. I did read it very quickly, but it wasn't keeping me completely gripped the whole time, and I found the logic a little bit lower as well. Like, there are parts just didn't make sense, and I think for me that was the insta love kind of side as well. I enjoyed it a lot. It got a 4 star, so 7.2 is a decent rating, but it just wasn't, you know, I feel like I would like to reread The Kiss Quotient, not on this vlog because I've got far too many books on my list at the moment, but I would really like to reread it at some point, because I feel like I maybe didn't give it the best chance, and if I reread it, I think I might like it a little bit more. Hello. I have just finished reading Red, White and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston. I've got back in a bad jump on my lap. Hello, Papa. So, yeah. I did like this. I haven't narrated it. I liked it. However, I do have a few critiques with it. First of all, the writing. This sounds silly, but this story would have worked so much better in first person. Well, excuse you. Writing it in third person just feels a very strange choice. And it made me feel like I never really connected to the characters. Thank you. So there's that. I also felt like, again, and this is also one I didn't connect to the characters. Characters just seemed to be plonked in the story rather than being introduced in a natural way. I annotated this one and I got to, I was about 20 pages in. I was at the royal wedding. Yeah, I was about 20 pages in when I realized that of the three sort of American characters, Alex, June and Nora, it was 20 pages in that I realised that Nora was a friend and not the mother. And the way they just go, Ellen says, and I was like, who the fuck is Ellen? She wasn't introduced, she was just plonked there. And then it was expected that, you then understood from circumstance that she was their mother and the president. But yeah, it felt very weird. That happened a lot. And to be honest, even by the end of the book, there were some characters that I was like, I still don't entirely know who you are. And this did the other thing that always annoys me when writers do it. So there's a character called Raphael Luna in here, who sometimes is called Raph, sometimes is called Luna, sometimes is called Raphael Luna. And I'm like, can you please just give him a name and stick with it instead of changing his name every 5 minutes, because it's very confusing. So yeah, writing, I wasn't a big fan of the writing style and I didn't feel like I connected to the characters. The other thing as well, so this was written in 2019, I think it was about 2019, or at least it was published in 2019. And I feel like, and I'm saying this as a Brit, I feel like this is a little bit too on the nose. So we follow Prince Henry, who has fallen in love with a biracial American, and the palace don't approve, effectively. Sound familiar? Yeah, me too. And yeah, I don't feel like it was told in a very fair way. Even to the extent of, like, Prince Henry lost a parent at a young age, which just, it just felt a little bit too on the nose and a little bit unfairly told. I don't think that she was at all sympathetic to the British side at all. Even things like, there felt like there was no sympathy for his mum, who lost her husband very suddenly. And yes, she wasn't very good towards her children, with that, withdrew into herself, but there was no sympathy for the fact that she lost her husband. And just little things like that, I feel, weren't handled very well. I also thought, what in my mind just again made me feel like it felt a little bit too on the nose and felt like it wasn't handled well throughout. Alex was like, oh well, once the election's over, we can be together. Once the election's over, blah blah blah. And it was never mentioned or never considered that even though Henry had said early on, I I can't come, this isn't going to go away from me. This being in the spotlight is not going to go away from me. Alex never seemed to consider that. And then when everything did come out, it didn't matter that that was much more difficult for Henry. It just was, oh my God, we're going to lose the election. And yeah, I feel like it then was this blame that it was the palace's fault that Henry wasn't, was that the press are hounding them. And yes, it it was, but also again, I just feel like it wasn't handled very. Yeah, I feel like I've gone off on a tangent a little bit there. So I did like the story. I just didn't think it was very well written. I liked the romance. Well, I liked them as a couple. I didn't really like the romance as such. Maybe I did. It was cute. It sounds like it didn't really do anything for me. It was cute. It wasn't fantastic. It wasn't groundbreaking. Um, I would probably give it 3 stars. I liked it. I liked it fine. It was very cute. I'm probably not going to reread it, but I would read more by Casey McQuiston. Which yeah, I feel like that is kind of my summing up on this. In terms of being the winner of the Goodreads Choice Awards, I do think that having a queer and non-white, a mixed race main character win the award is fantastic. I do believe this is the only queer book in that I'm reading for this vlog. I think every other book the main couple are straight. And I think it is only this one and the Kiss Quotient where the main couple are not white. So I do appreciate that, and I do think that is something that is important to be aware of, particularly in romance. And I think that romance today, now in 2023, is doing better in terms of the queer rep and the mix and the different racial rep as well. But the fact it took to 2019 before we could get, a queer winner is a bit sad. But yeah, that are my thoughts on Red, White and Royal Blue. I now need to edit this vlog and do wrap up. Just one more thing I want to add on Red, White and Royal Blue. Don't know how I forgot about this, but the politics. Okay, I'm British. I do not understand American politics in the slightest. And there were far too much of it. And I know it's a political romance, I guess. He is the son of the president. Clearly there is going to be politics, but there was so much talk of politics. And it wasn't ever even sort of explained to people who don't understand American politics. But then on top of that, the politics was so idealized. Is that the right word? Because they're Democrats, therefore everything is perfect and they are only ever wanting to do the right thing, and everything is fantastic, and everyone who is not a Democrat is therefore evil. And I think that's the same sort of feeling as I was having with the scenes with the monarchy, where it's you are therefore evil and bad, and we in America are good. We are Democrat, you are Republic. And it just doesn't, A, that's just not true. And B, it just didn't feel fair. It didn't feel well rounded. There was a bit like when the scandal and the leaks came out, it would have been so much better if the leak had come from inside the house. If someone on the team was the person that was the mole, that was the leak, just to show that just because they're a Democrat doesn't mean that they're all bloody angels. Um, and it this read like it seemed to be that this sex scandal was the only scandal that had ever happened in the history of politics for both the royal family and the presidents, which just you know, is a little bit over the top. So yeah, I guess my feelings are, I liked it. Like I said, I'm thinking it's probably going to be about 3 star. I liked it. It was cute. It was fun. Um, it wasn't well written at all, and it wasn't. I don't feel like it was well researched. I don't think that it was that well plotted. Um, it feels to me like it. It to me, and this sounds like a very weird, slightly mean criticism, but it feels to me a little bit like a self-pub where the author has written it, they reread it, they've gone, wow, I'm fantastic, publish. And no one else has ever read to this before it's, you know, been printed. And it's never been looked at by an editor because it just didn't, it doesn't feel finished. It feels like it needs some polishing. So I know there is a movie coming out soon, maybe next week, I don't know, which might be better because they might have like been able to change some of the, because it's the poor writing for me that has made this not a favorite. um so maybe in the movie they can fix the writing, I don't know. But yeah, that was my last thought. Goodreads Choice Awards in 2020. And my rating for it was a 4 star. I liked it a lot. I did read it incredibly quickly. I read it in one sitting. It's 500 and something pages. I honestly don't know how I read it in one sitting, but I did. I just smashed it through. I did find it quite predictable. I'm reading my review as I'm doing this. I found it quite predictable. And I felt like the world building wasn't great. I felt the world building was lacking basically. I didn't really understand very much about the world building. And again, I've not actually, and I think part of the reason is just I'm not very good at continuing series, but part of the reason as well is once I finished the book, I was like, that was a great time, had so much fun, but I don't really get it. Like, it's not a story that's stuck in my head. I read this in 2020, so I did read it 3 years ago, but the story just hasn't stayed stuck in my head. I know who the characters are, but, well, I know two of the characters, but I don't feel massively connected to them. I still can't really tell you like why Poppy was the chosen one who couldn't be touched. I don't understand why that was, and I didn't really get it at the time, but I've never understood it. So the ratings I gave, and again, this was in 2020 at the time when I just read it, and because I said I binge read it super quickly, put that down nearer a 7 because I don't remember anything about the characters. Atmosphere, I gave a 9 out of 10. I mean, it was smutty. I had a really good time reading it. So, you know, good atmosphere. Writing, 8 out of 10. Again, I think I probably would go a little bit lower now. Just because, again, the world building was quite poor, in my opinion. Plot, 7. Again, I would probably agree with that. Possibly would go a tiny bit lower, but maybe to 6.5 only. I don't feel like there was much plot beyond the smut. Intrigue, 8. I read it in one sitting. I can't really say that I wasn't intrigued. You know, I binge read it. Logic, 7. Again, things didn't make sense because I don't know quite, you know, how they worked. So it sounds fair. And enjoyment, I gave a 9, which I'd agree with. I did have a really good time reading it. So that got a total of an 8.14 out of 10, which is a pretty high rating, to be honest. I Okay, so I finished reading You and Me on Vacation, and I really, really liked this one. So in this one we follow Poppy and Alex. They have been best friends since college, and every year they've taken a vacation together in the summer. It's all started off as sort of super cheap, as cheap as possible student budgets, a week away here or there. Poppy ended up getting a job at a very fancy travel magazine who paid for her trips. And 2 years ago, they took a trip to Croatia. Something happened, we don't know what, and they haven't spoken since. This year, Poppy gets back in touch and says, let's take another summer trip. So this one's, we've got our current summer trip happening in Palm Springs, which I loved. And then you've also got flashbacks to previous summer trips. So there'll be a chapter that is 7 summers ago, 3 summers ago, etc. And I really liked that format. I liked how the flashbacks weren't their own story. They were adding to the main storyline. It's not a dual timeline story. So I really enjoyed that. I loved the characters. I want an Alex in my life. Hi, if you are like Alex Nilsson and you would like to apply to be my male best friend / lover, apply below. I just adored him. I thought he was fantastic. Poppy irritated me a little bit, but not enough to make me lose any interest or any enjoyment. So my ratings for this one, so again, run it through Cool Pile. I gave the characters 9. Like I said, Alex, current book boyfriend, adored him to bits, amazing. Poppy, ever so slightly irritating, but I feel like it was her personality that was irritating, which actually, it sounds so weird, but I actually quite like that. Her personality shone through so much on the page, and I can imagine if I knew her in real life, I'd be like, oh my God, you are too much. But as I guess, an antithesis to Alex, who is very kind of like calm and straight and sensible, she was fantastic, and I really liked the characters. So I gave them a 9. Atmosphere, I gave a 9. I thought the atmosphere was fantastic. I loved the very, very slow burn tension. We were from Poppy's point of view quite a lot, well, for the whole way. And I loved kind of seeing how Poppy was kind of getting someone what she was doing with her feelings and how she was trying to prioritise her friendship over her tiny, weeny little crush. Through the beginning, she's like, there's that 5% what if. And I totally feel like that. I've had the exact same situation with a friend where I'm like, we are we the best friends? Could we be a good couple? Don't know. I don't want to ruin the friendship, so didn't go there. But, maybe I should have read this one first. Writing, I really liked. I like Emily Henry's writing. I like her humour. I like her tension. I like her build-ups. Again, I gave that one a 9. Plot, I gave an 8.5. I felt like there were 1 or 2 unanswered questions. I would have liked to have known a little bit more about what happened in Croatia. I'd have liked to have had, I felt like for a lot of the book, their relationship was, we spend 2 weeks together in the summer and then we don't speak to each other for the other 50 weeks of the year. And I'd have liked to have seen a little bit more of that deep friendship, which was mentioned throughout, but we just didn't. I felt like we saw it, but we could have seen a little bit more. Intrigue, I gave a 9. I pretty much, from the start, I wanted to know what had happened in Croatia, what went wrong between these two, and where is it going to go. I think I said in one of my updates, I loved their friendship, and I almost would have been happy if they didn't end up in a relationship, if they didn't become lovers, but obviously it's a romance, so, just because I thought their friendship was so fantastic. Logic, I gave 8.5. Again, some things I just felt could have done with a little bit more explaining, a little bit more description, but still really enjoyed. And enjoyment, I gave it a 10. Perfect, I loved it. So this one got a 5-star, a 9.00 on the nose, so a perfect 5-star. I have nothing else to say. I really, really enjoyed this one. I think I think this one will be my favourite Emily Henry. I've read Book Lovers and Beach Read, and I think You and Me on Vacation is taking pole position. One thing I will say, not that they're going to, be watching this, but hey, people at Penguin who publish Emily Henry's books, just a little tip, maybe read the book before you decide on the title. You and Me on Vacation, great title, makes sense. People We Meet on Vacation, not great title, doesn't make sense. But regardless, really enjoyed this one, and yeah, it was fantastic. Nora is a literary agent and Charlie is an editor. They are both kind of top of their respective games. However, they don't get on. So we then have, Nora has a client who wants Charlie to edit her book, which they agree to, so they have to now work together. Like I said, they don't get on with each other. They end up going to this Nora and her sister go on holiday to this small town. Who does she bump into there but Charlie? Turns out Charlie grew up in this small town, and it's the kind of quaint, small American town which Nora's sister, whose name I don't remember at all, completely romanticizes, and she's made up this whole list of, right, you're going to kiss someone who's wearing plaid, and you're going to, I don't know, we're going to save a local business. That's Bella's tale. So this whole list of stroke a horse and things like that are on this list of things that they're going to do while they are in this small town. I think they're there for 2 months over the summer. And it is super cute. It is it's an enemies to love. Well, again, I would say it's not a very good enemies to lovers. It's a rivals to lovers. And again, in my opinion, the rivalry is fairly weak. The reason Nora doesn't like Charlie because he didn't shake her hand when they first met. I think that is the whole reason. It is, in my opinion, quite a weak enemies or rivalry reason. However, it is super, super cute. I did really enjoy it. I really enjoyed the romance. I really enjoyed the slow burn. What I also really liked with this one is as we got towards the end, it was very much a case of, you don't need to settle. I feel like in a lot of romances, there's this kind of view of, if at the end you're not married and pregnant, you failed. And I don't think that is everybody's happy ever after. And I'm not mentioning the epilogue, because I didn't particularly like the epilogue to this one. But I do feel like the proper ending, ignoring the epilogue, was a really great ending in my opinion. So when I ran this one through Pile, characters I gave 8.5. I liked them both. Like I said, I didn't feel like the rivalry or the enemies was strong enough. Atmosphere I gave a 9. Again, tension, slow burn, love it. Writing I gave a 9, really liked it. Plot I gave an 8, because there were some kind of loopholes and things that just felt a little bit weak. Intrigue I gave a 7.5. This one I think did take me a bit of time to read. Yeah, I read it in a weekend, but I read it in a weekend for a readathon rather than because I was wanting to read a book, because I loved it so much I couldn't put it down. Logic I gave a 7. Again, I felt like there were loopholes and plot holes and things that just didn't completely make sense. And enjoyment I gave a 9. So this one got a 4.5 and 8.29 on Pile. I really enjoyed it. Like I said, that's a very high rate, and a 4.5 is a fantastic rating and a really high rating. And when I read it, this went straight into my top Emily Henry. Since I've read this one, I have, again, you've just seen it, but I have since read You and Me on Vacation, which I do enjoy a little bit more. my one, so this seems to be an ongoing theme with Emily Henry books, and it's nothing to do with the content. It is only to do with the synopsis and basically with the cover. This scene of the two of them rowing boats on a lake doesn't happen, doesn't exist, not a thing. And again, I know I'm being so petty about this, but why? Why is your cover nothing to do with your books? Why is your title, this one isn't, title nothing to do with your books? Why is your synopsis nothing to do with your books? It really frustrates me. I am very easily frustrated by very silly things. Also, and again, I'm just going on a bit of a random rant now, but it annoys me that Happy Place has come out in hardback only because all of the rest are in paperback. So I'm not reading Happy Place until, well, I've actually got it on ARC, but I'm not going to buy Happy Place until it comes out in paperback. Anyway, that was my review of Book Lovers. Hello, it is 9:30 at night. We are on the 9th of August. I wanted this vlog to go out in July. It has clearly not. And I've finally, I've had to edit this vlog 3 times because it keeps on going wrong. So I'm just filming my outro now, filming like my kind of final little thoughts and wrap ups, putting this outro in, and I'm going to just export it now tonight, almost whatever it looks like. It's over an hour long already. So I've had a great time reading all of these romance books. Be totally honest, I have not found, well, maybe I found one new fave, but I haven't found any like hidden gems that I hadn't ever heard of and was like, oh my God, this was amazing. But I've had a lot of fun reading the romance books. What I did just want to go through is, I guess, what I think these books have added to romance as a genre and like the romance canon. Because I feel like if you're an award winner in a specific genre, not only do you need to be the best book in that genre, but you need to be adding something to like the canon. So let's think back to the beginning. Black Dagger Brotherhood, I'm going to do them both together. I hated those books. However, I can acknowledge that they added a lot to the romance canon in terms of paranormal romance. And I do think that if we hadn't had that paranormal romance back in the early 2010s, we wouldn't have now grown to the fantasy romance, which is popular today in the 2020s. So, you know, I think even things like, say, ACOTAR, From Blood and Ash, Fortuna Sworn, some of the, you know, your big fantasy romance series hark back to things like Black Dagger Brotherhood, you know, with that original paranormal romance. 50 Shades, and I'm pretty sure I did mention this earlier. Again, I don't know. I've edited this vlog so many times I have no idea what I've kept in and what I haven't kept in. But 50 Shades, I think, has been huge for romance. I think if it wasn't for 50 Shades, we wouldn't have the romance authors we have today. You know, we wouldn't have Emily Henry, we wouldn't have Ali Hazelwood, we wouldn't have Tessa Bailey. That kind of contemporary romance, that sex positivity, that smut on page, we just didn't really see that in a commercial fiction before 50 Shades. So I think 50 Shades has definitely added to the romance canon to make romance, it sounds lame, but to make romance cool again. But to make it be accessible for everybody and not just either something that your grandmother reads or something weird with vampires. I'm skipping over Love at Last because we've spoken about Black Dagger Brotherhood. But then we've got Outlander. So again, like I was saying, I don't really feel like Outlander is a romance. I feel like it's more of a fantasy. I think, though, what Outlander as a series has added to the romance canon is that, again, that excitement around the book to film adaptations. So when this one won the award in 2013, I think, 14, this was when Game of Thrones was being made. You know, you still had other, even things like Harry Potter was big at that time. Hunger Games was still big. So book to movie adaptations were a big thing. And for romance to get in on that, away from just the fantasy side, to have romance coming in on the book to movie or the book to screen adaptations, I think is really important. And I think that, again, has paved the way for a lot of the current book to movie or book to screen adaptations that we're seeing as well. We then have Colleen Hoover, and to be totally honest, while I don't think that Colleen Hoover is necessarily a romance author, I feel like she has done a lot for the genre. So of the 3 books we've discussed in this vlog, I think that Confess is most like a romance. It Ends With Us, I really don't like to call a romance. I don't feel like it is a romance. It's, you know, it's a contemporary. And Without Merit felt more like a YA contemporary rather than even a YA romance. It had no romance in it. So even though those 3 books I don't think are good examples, I feel like Colleen Hoover as an author has added a lot to the romance genre and the romance canon. A lot of people do relate romance with Colleen Hoover, especially these days, especially since the rise of TikTok. We then move in to the Kiss Quotient, Helen Huang. Absolutely fantastic. We finally got some different diversity rep. We've got POC author, we've got POC main characters, we've got autistic main characters. Amazing. Yes, please, hallelujah. Let's have our diversity in our romance. And moving on again with Red, White and Royal Blue. Same thing, we've now got queer rep in here as well. We've still got our mixed race diversity. So yeah, I think that those 2 particularly are adding a lot in terms of diversity, which is sorely needed by this point. By the fact it's taken up to 2018 for there to be any diversity at all, to be anything that isn't just white and straight, is shocking. From Blood and Ash, I mean, fantasy romance, like I said, I feel like From Blood and Ash harks back to Black Dagger Brotherhood. Again, there's the same sort of vampire themes going through there. It is the fantasy romance, which I feel like Black Dagger Brotherhood really started. I'm on a sprint with Becca and the alarm just went off. So From Blood and Ash, yes, I think that does definitely add to the romance canon in terms of popularising fantasy romance for the 2020s. And I do think that that was possibly a circumstantial thing. You know, obviously 2020, we had COVID, everybody was trying to escape. Everybody was more into reading because it was 2020 and people had nothing else to do. But I think people were wanting that escape, and I think fantasy romance filled that gap. And so, yeah, I think From Blood and Ash, while again, it's not the best written, not the best book in the world, I think it did a lot for romance as a genre and as the canon. And then finally, Emily Henry, You and Me in Vacation and Book Lovers. Oh, bless you, Bella. I feel like Emily Henry is popularising romance. I don't feel like the books are anything groundbreaking. I have loved them both, but I don't feel like they are groundbreaking. I don't think like they're adding anything new to romance as a genre. But I think it is great to see an author who is, you know, yeah, popularising romance. A lot of people now recognise the name Emily Henry. If you look in any bookshop and there's a TikTok table, Emily Henry will be on there somewhere, which I think is fantastic. So to wrap up, first of all, if by some miracle you have got this far, thank you so much. I don't know if I have got this far, but please leave me a love heart because, you know, love. If you've read any of these books, let me know your thoughts. Do you agree with me? Are there any that you liked and I disliked, or vice versa? If you say that you liked Black Dagger Brotherhood, we need words. And if you liked this video, please do leave me a like, subscribe if you would like to. I promise I don't make hour-plus long vlogs very often because I'm really shit at vlogging and generally they're 10 minutes long. But please do subscribe and I will see you in the next one.